All right. Um, Thank you so much for coming out. This is a somber time right now in the city of Buffalo after a weekend of community violence. We are here to respond with real solutions that are going to reduce community violence and crime overall, improve the relationship between police and community, and the quality of life for residents of Buffalo. I am joined here today with New York Public Advocate Jumaane Williams, with Brother Dorian from the Outsource Center, and with Kay, who are going to offer some solutions, especially on the heels of the announcement of the governor that gun violence has been declared a public health emergency and resources will be made available to pursue solutions like job training, like community centers and violence interruption programs for our young people in the city of Buffalo. I am disappointed that the folks who live over in the Donovan housing complex were met with a hyper militarized police as a response to the shooting that occurred on Monday evening. And what they were asking for is more resources for repairs to be made to the complex, such as cameras that are not functioning. It is my concern that that community has experienced a very deeply hurtful trauma, and our response was to re-victimize them with another traumatic event rather than sending in social workers and mental health counselors to help them work through the grievance process as an addition to the increase in police activity. So with that, I will hand it over to Jumaane Williams to talk about some work that is being done in New York City and New Jersey, and the potential for a partnership right here in Buffalo so that we can bring real solutions to our community. Thank you.
Thank you so much, India, for that. And as was mentioned, my name is Jumaane Williams, public advocate from New York City. This is actually the third stop we made on a gun violence kind of tour that we've been doing over this past weekend in the country. Actually, about 400 shootings occurred. I think, sadly, to date from Friday in Buffalo, I think it's up to about 21 or 26, unfortunately. In Syracuse, we had 5. In New York City, there was 26. We had some in Utica, in Rochester, and Long Island. This is a problematic issue, not just in Buffalo, but what we're trying to show is the connectivity that's occurring across the state and across the nation. But we believe that New York can lead the way in how to address these issues. And we too were very happy to hear many of the pronouncements that the governor made yesterday, because it's many of the things that we have been asking for such a long time. The first bad part is that it took so long to get here. There's a lot of people whose lives were lost by waiting. And now we just have to see if those words and pronouncements are backed up by investment and by structural change. We do know that there's a young child fighting for their lives right now. That happened over in the Donovan houses. And what was striking to me as I heard about what happened and the response within 72 hours of what happened there was the police coming in with force. We have reports, have to confirm it, of doors being knocked in, of heavy presence. That sounds familiar across the state and cities, that these are the responses that we've seen. We've also seen that police and law enforcement by themselves can't solve this problem. And so they were traumatized by a young baby being killed and then re-traumatized by what they saw yesterday. My biggest question was, where were the other agencies? Where are the agencies that also have services that they can provide? Did anyone think that this community might need some mental health services based on the trauma that they were exposed to? Did anybody ask them, what is it that is happening here that keeps seeing this kind of violence increasing? How can we feed those services? And we see this in every city. It tracks the places that people feel they don't have adequate and safe housing, adequate and quality education, adequate and quality food that they can feed their children, jobs that they can afford to pay these things. We see violence, and we see it remarkably the same all over the place. And as a city, we can help deal with the root causes of violence. I want to be clear. This is not an excuse. No one is excused for shooting up a street. No one is excused for shooting a child, a baby, a grandmother. There is no excuse for that. And we understand that there has to be accountability. But what we've seen for far too long is cities saying to the police departments, you are solely responsible for this. And it is unfair to police officers who actually don't have the tools and don't want to be responding to all the things that they're responding to. And of course, it's unfair to the communities who are not getting what they need. And these communities are sandwiched. They're sandwiched between very real violence, too often, very real over-policing. If they dare to complain about over-policing, they'll get under-policing. And they deserve to have what everyone else has in exchange for their taxes. Transparent and accountable policing. But they also need the services to live lives that everybody else want to live. When I heard about what happened in Donovan, I thought about NYCHA, which is the public housing in New York City. There were 3 grandmothers who were strangled to death. It was a mass murderer walking around NYCHA. Some of the response was, oh, we need more police. Those public housing residents said, no, all we actually wanted was the cameras to be working, the cameras to be installed that we asked for the doors to be locked. My understanding, there were cameras that weren't working in Donovan houses. So we have to have leadership that's going to actually provide an answer to the problems of crime and gun violence spiking. What we don't want to see is people apologizing 30 years from now for a knee-jerk reaction that they do now. Because that's what's happening in the present day, right? People are apologizing for a knee-jerk reaction 30 years ago that affected generations of these communities. And we're saying we don't have to do that. We understand that law enforcement has a role to play, but public safety is much broader than that. And are those other things being funded? Are there structural changes so that other people are involved in the conversation around public safety? And what we see is that is what Buffalonians are asking for. That's what Buffalonians need. And what our presence here today is to say that this is not just happening in Buffalo, in Syracuse, Rochester, New York City. And if we can combine our trauma, combine what we know is right, and demand the resources and structural change